Isn't it always the way though? You run out of bobbin when you're this close to done. Where's my pen? With a template I can't draw. You're basically coloring. Who doesn't like to color? Hi, and welcome back to the Finesse Color Challenge. I'm Angelique, and just to remind you what the Finesse Color Challenge is, I pulled 2 colors from random, and then I have to come up with a way to use those 2 colors just using what I know about color theory, my sewing, and quilting skills to come up with one great project. In the previous episode, I drew Winter Market and Safari, and I made this really fun mermaid wall hanging. So if you missed that one, please be sure to check that video out on our YouTube channel, and remember to like and subscribe so you never miss another episode. So let's go ahead and get started with the pull of the colors for today's challenge. We're just gonna dump these in here. Okay, all gone. Give it that good mix. Okay, I'm gonna pull, whoops, stay. All right, I'm not looking, I promise. But I'm gonna pull my first one. Pink rose, fun. Okay, what's gonna be color number 2? Color number 2, good color, come on. Good color. Moss, My colors are pink rose and moss. Let me do some thinking. We are gonna add one more caveat to today's challenge. I have to use our newest product, the Hummingbird Hoop. If you're not familiar with our new Hummingbird Hoop, it is the newest way for you to free motion quilt. It's basically for push quilters. It's very simple to use. You can use it with your domestic machine, and it's gonna alleviate that strain and stress of push quilting by helping you manage the fabric and easily move it around to create your design. So let's see what I come up with for today's project, also using this. So let me put my thinking cap on and see what can I come up with these 2 colors and the Hummingbird Hoop. I think we're gonna need to consult the color wheel on this one. We're really gonna focus on the tertiary color portion of the color wheel. So the first color I wanna look at is our pink color here, our pink rose, which is going to fall into the red-violet category. By adding a little bit of white to this, it's gonna change the shade, and that's how we're gonna get to this pink category. And if we go completely across to the other side, we see the greens. So green is actually an analogous color to pinks. So I think that kind of looking at these 2, I think that I'm starting to lean to the idea of something floral. So as we get into that like violet-y color and then they move in and we add that white, we start getting closer to the pink rose here. And then these are some of the complementary colors that go with this color. So we'll probably see some of that peek in when I go to make my fabric selection. But my biggest focus really is going to be in those analogous colors. So the colors that are right across from each other. And as we get into those darker colors, we get some of these brighter pinks. And I really love a nice bright pink. So I'm starting to lean to kind of blending in this brighter green and this brighter pink. So I think I want to do a smaller project. And you know what? I've been wanting some new placemats at home. So I think that's what we're going to focus on, some kind of a floral placemat. All right, so I took my pink rose and my moss, as well as some of those other colors that went along, like magenta, princess pink, in the greens, sage green, and Kelly green, and I took these to the fabric store. I found this one here. As you can see, this fits very nicely in with my drawn pink color, my pink rose, but we can see some of the tinges of this in here as well as some of the complementary colors as we start to get into those red areas. It even has some of these greens in it, as you can kind of see. So this was definitely one I had to have for this project. I also found this one, which really kind of fits with these two colors. So this is really going to be kind of close to the moss that I wanted here, as well as a little bit of those brighter greens, but also has some of those two elements as well. And then this one just had that fuchsia color that I wanted to really pop. So I think these are all going to make really great backgrounds. I want to make the center pop, and I think that's where I'm going to focus on something a little bit different. While I'm still trying to figure out what I want my centerpiece to look like, let's go ahead and start with the background of the placemat. From these colors, I'm going to cut 4-inch blocks. So I'm going to cut 4 of those, I think 6 of those, and I want to say 10 of those. And we're going to start laying these out to come up with our placemat. All right, I think I like how that looks. This will be nice for a centerpiece here. Got the darker colors on the outside that really kind of pull the vibrant colors from the center here. So we're just simply going to sew our blocks together to make rows and sew our rows together. Okay, so I have basted my quilt pieces together. So we have the top that we just made of some batting and just some backing I had left over from a previous project, because you know how I like to use leftovers or really just hoard them. And I've got it partially on here. I basically, because this was a little bit smaller piece and I only had a little bit of fabric and I was trying to stretch to make it work, I did have a little piece of leftover leader that I cut off, and I threw that on here just to give me a little bit of extra length. And so I'm going to finish getting my quilt on here by adding the clamps, giving it a nice little twist, adding the clamps on the side, and then just kind of managing my roll of fabric with the bungees that are included. All right, I'm gonna put my glasses on so I can actually see my stitching. And I'm just gonna do a simple meander since this is a background. Take a couple of stitches so I can trim off my excess. And we're going to see how easy it is to quilt with the new Hummingbird Hoop. You can hold it any way that you like that's comfortable for you. You can hold it in the center here. You can hold it, I like kind of over here, keeps my shoulders nice and wide and neutral. I also sometimes like holding it underneath. Sometimes I just get tired of having my arms up all together, and I'll just hold it just underneath above the wheels. That's why with the Hummingbird Hoop you can quilt your way. All right, so I'm getting close to the end of my quiltable area, so I'm just going to take my quilt off and flip it. Oops, ran out of bobbin. So close. Isn't it always the way though? You run out of bobbin when you're this close to done. Lost at bobbin chicken. All right, let's pull up and continue. All right, so we're quilted. We're going to take this to the cutting board. Now that it's all quilted, we're just going to trim it to the final size. So I'm just going to set this to the side while I work on my centerpiece. And so as I've been playing with the new Hummingbird, it does kind of remind me a little bit of a embroidery hoop. So I think what I'm going to do is make some petals and some leaves and make a floral centerpiece. And so I have some white fabric here, and I have added some SF 101. ironed it down really well. And now I'm going to draw me some leaf shapes and some petals. I'm not a great drawer, as you know, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of a template. Where's my pen? There it is, hiding. And my lid keeps coming off. So I got some shapes I liked. So I'm just going to draw a few of these out. We're gonna need a total of 6 petals, and I think I'm gonna do them in 2 different colors. And let's go with 8 leaves. I'm also gonna do these in 2 different colors. So I'm just gonna draw all these out. Even with a template, I can't draw. Let's get us started so I can show you what it is I'm gonna do. So we're gonna move back over to the hummingbird. I've decided that I'm going to embroider, using the hummingbird hoop and the little rebel, some leaves and some petals. And I'm gonna start by kind of tracing around this line. I'm just gonna take a few stitches first so that I can get my thread out of the way. And I'm just gonna trace around as close as I can to my drawn line. And now I'm just going to try to fill this in with thread. This is gonna take some time, but it's like really relaxing because you're basically coloring. Who doesn't like to color? Oh, my thread got tangled. You gotta love when thread does things that you just don't expect thread to do. Like create its own knots. All right, I think I filled in enough of the white, so I'm going to switch colors. So I can have 2 different colors of petals. Okay, that's enough of that. All right, so now all those petals and leaves that I just made, I'm going to carefully cut out. And I'm using pinking shears because 1, I'm not going to get like the runsies when your edges of your fabric fray. And 2, I think it just looks really pretty. And so if you did go over a little bit, you're not going to notice it once you get your shapes cut out. You don't even have to unpick. All right, now it's time to find the center of our placemat. So I'm just going to fold it in half and get me kind of a crease because I already sort of have a horizontal center. And so this is where my center is going to be. And I just have a little circle template that I'm going to use so I can draw myself a circle for lining up my pieces. And just a little tip, you know, we're using this heat erasable pen. So when you were working and you didn't completely like fill in all of your petals, you can just iron this. Your thread is going to be just fine. All right, so I'm going to start by laying out my petals. I just kind of want to get an idea of how I want them to overlap and create my flower in the center. And then I'm going to lay out my leaves. So I want the pointier part of the leaf coming out. So I'm just going to start just kind of tucking these in at first until I get how I think I want them to look. Okay, and so now I'm going to take my petals off and just kind of adjust my leaves. I want to make sure that they are just overlapping that center marking that I made. And then I'm going to do a little pinning in place of each of my leaves once I get them where I want them. I know you could hand sew this, but I don't like hand sewing. So I'm going to take this over to the machine and I'm going to stitch down my leaves once I get them pinned on. Okay, so for this, I gotta be a little careful because I do have these pins sticking out in the bottom. Of course, I pulled my thread out and couldn't see well enough to put it back in. Do any of you double glasses up so you can see a little bit better? Now I want a 3-dimensional look to this, so I am just going to pull up my bobbin and just sew along the bottom of the leaf. And I'm gonna remember to pull my pin out as I go so I don't break a needle. And you want these to be really secure, so sew a couple of times, or like I said, you can hand sew. And I'm not gonna worry about trimming my threads right now. I'm just gonna get lined up with my next piece. And I'm just gonna continue to do this all the way around. All right, now we're ready to put back our petals on, and we're gonna pin those down as well. Okay, we're gonna go stitch these. So when I stitch these, I'm gonna try to stitch sort of in a circle, catching a good portion of the edge of each petal and how I want them to overlap. And I'm gonna do that just a couple of times so they're nice and secure. Trim my thread since I left my scissors over here. All right, now we just need to bind it and it'll be done. Oh, I forgot something. I need my handy dandy binding tool. Can't bind without it. I left my scissors again. And it's all done. So you can fluff up the petals and the leaves how you like to get a three-dimensional look to it. If you want, you can even add starch, but with all the thread and the SF101, it does tend to hold its shape pretty well. And so if it does flatten out, you can just easily kind of pop those up. All right, tell me, what do you think? Did I complete the challenge? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to make your own set of these, there will be a link in the description to a pattern. Until next time.